Hi guys, welcome to this week's Fife Properties vlog and episode 5. Weekly market updates today. We can take your questions and answers as usual. So if you've got anything you want to ask us, how to do the perfect viewing, why is it an offers over system? These are all questions that have been asked this week. Why is it that some agents charge a lot more than other agents? That's another question I've been asked this week. So there's loads of things as well. One of the things we want to concentrate on today is about the article I've just written is the Fife's generation rent to become generation buy. So I've got my co-hosts here, Richard Cook and Jimmy Mullen, here today. And so let's talk about this for a minute. Okay, so Boris Johnson has attracted both praise and horror in equal measure with the new plan for 95% mortgages to help beleaguered first-time buyers to get into the property ladder. But would that expose UK taxpayers to too much risk? So I discuss really about the implications of what that would mean both nationally and locally in Fife itself. Morning, Danny, how are you? So with the Fife property market taking off due to the stamp duty holiday introduced in the summer, Boris Johnson has announced at the recent conference that they had a plan to offer the first-time buyers long-term, low-interest, 95% mortgages, meaning that they only need to raise a 5% deposit. Yet, when some of the borrowers when someone borrows more than 75%, now this is key, the banks normally take out an insurance in case the buyer defaults and the bank lose money if the property gets repossessed. Okay, so when the economy is good, the risk is low. So the insurance premiums are also low for the banks, meaning that they're happy to lend a high percentage loans. Yet nobody could deny that we are entering a period of real uncertainty in the next 12 to 18 months, meaning that insurance premiums for the banks will have gone through the roof. Morning, Dan. Morning, Carly. Mortgages, so this is the wee final bit, so we'll stop and have a wee chat about this. Mortgage companies have avoided riskier, higher percentage first-time buyer mortgages since the start of the coronavirus pandemic. At the end of February 2020, here's the key there, they were just under 400 95% loan-to-value mortgages, products accessible to first-time buyers, yet today it stands at 26. That's unbelievable. I mean, that dropped significantly. What are your thoughts on that, Richard? You know, is that the right thing to do?
I don't know. I mean, I agree the logic behind it to a certain degree, but then where does it leave first-time buyers? I think, especially in areas like Fife as well. And I think, obviously, in the article it mentions as well about mortgage providers and things are all working from home, and they're being quite selective about what kind of products they're offering. And I think it's they are making it harder for first-time buyers, which I didn't think is the best thing, really, to be fair, especially for areas like Fife.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is, for me, first-time buyers are obviously key to our market. They tend to, first-time buyers are key from the point of view that we need them in the beginning in order to allow these people in the first-time buyer properties to upgrade from there. So we need to have a buoyant first-time buyers market, definitely. I mean, Jimmy, what are your thoughts on it?
Well, I think I'll agree with you there. I mean, sometimes first-time buyers can start a chain of 2, 3, 4 properties. Yeah. So if they're not there, ultimately some people will never be able to move because their property market is gone. A lot of properties like that in Fife, especially operate mainly in the Cooper area. So properties under typically I would say a first-time buyer is sort of under 150,000, but so you need either they'll be buy-to-let people either buying them or first-time buyers. Predominantly, I would say. So if the first-time buyer's gone, the market for those properties just, I would say, almost halves. I don't know the numbers exactly, but I would say almost halves. And ultimately, those people will never be able to move on to a bigger home if they want to or if they need to, because first-time buyers won't be there.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. Morning, Stephen. How are you? Yeah, first-time buyers are obviously key, essential to do us to upgrade and get on and move forward. So another reason for removing the number of 95% mortgages was that demand for the lower percentage loans exploded after lockdown was lifted. And this, with many mortgage staff are still working from home, the banks, the building societies are focused their attention on getting those less risky mortgages sorted first. Therefore, They removed the higher percentage loans from their books, so they weren't swamped with too much work. Now here's the thing here. There's been a deliberate thing from them to actually remove them because they're swamped with so much work, and we've seen that coming through, haven't we?
Yeah, that's what I was saying about them being selective about what cases and products they're offering. They're leaving out the higher risk things like first-time buyers, because they're obviously so swamped and they're not in the offices, they're working from home as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've this week had unfortunately had a couple of sales fall through because a couple of buyers unfortunately didn't have the best credit rating, and the banks have pulled the plug on them last minute. So yeah, it's the way it is right now. So I think it's key that first-time buyers, Boris is putting this together for first-time buyers to try and keep the market the way it is.
Yeah, it's quite a good comment from Stephen. With lockdown, first-time buyers have been able to save for a deposit, as have Bank of Mum and Dad. So that is actually a really good point. They've actually had the opportunity to save up for that deposit. But you've still got a lot of first-time buyers actually having to pay 15% deposit now still, because of the lack of availability of mortgages. How on earth? I remember when I was a first-time buyer, there was no way I would ever be able to afford 15% down on a property.
Yeah, I think that. Oh, sorry, carry on, Richard.
Yeah, here's fine.
You carry on.
I was just going to say, it wasn't that long ago I was a first-time buyer myself, and obviously to come up with a 15% deposit, that's hard. Luckily enough, I got a 95% mortgage, but people that didn't have that opportunity, and then, like I say, they're relying on, like Stephen says, they're relying on the Bank of Mum and Dad to help them.
I bought my first property that I'm in right now. Well, me and Charlotte are in right now on a 95% mortgage, and if we didn't have that, we would still be renting. There's no way that we could have done it without a 95% mortgage. But now we're here and happy, and we plan on moving on in 2 or 3 years' time. But if there's not going to be a first-time buyer's market, then ultimately we'll be here longer than we want to be.
That's the typical market when you think about it. It's the dilemma. It's you continually pay rent all the time, don't you? So you're continually paying rent all the time. So effectively, it doesn't allow you to save for a deposit in the first place because you're having to pay rent. So, Stephen's absolutely right. The lockdown for first-time buyers, with the bank staying with mum and dad, has actually allowed them to actually save for that deposit for the first time. Yeah. And actually moved them on the property ladder. But the exposure to the UK market, because, how is the government going to do that? Are they going to indemnify? The difference between the 85% and the mortgage providers is given and the 95% that the government's more or less trying to guarantee. I think that's one to consider. So we'll go on. So they've removed the first time the higher percentage loans from the books because they were swamped with too much work. So one must ask, should the government take on the risk of the mortgage providers in the form of a guarantee from the government, which is what I spoke about? Sparking concern amongst economists. The government is already burdened with debt. So does it really need any more? How far do we go here?
I would agree with that. To a certain extent, it's a good thing, like they help to buy things as well, but then it does increase the risk for the government, increasing their own debt, which we all know is quite high at the moment anyway. So, I would be in agreement with that statement.
I think though the property market, if the first-time buyers are there, the property market is going to keep on going, and ultimately there isn't going to be as much as a risk with the 95% mortgages being available because the market will just be more active. So I don't see there being that much a risk if the 95% mortgages are available, because a lot of people, as I said previously, will be able to move on more. Like, we're paying less here on a mortgage than we were renting. So it's going to help people on all aspects be able to move on, keep the market going, and lower the risk for the banks or the government, whatever way they want to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I did a paper previously, maybe a couple of months back, about that, how the average mortgage now is only a fraction of what the mortgage was in the 1980s and 1990s. In my day, during the war, I feel like Uncle Albert from Only Frozen Horses every time I come on here. Because it's always in my day, because you two are so young. But in my day, the mortgage represented about almost 50 to 60% of your income. It was a significant amount. Yet today, you'd be lucky if it's about 15% of your income in terms of that. So there's a fundamental difference. And we often say, it's the people today can't get on the ladder because of that, but it's not. They can't get on the ladder because of the lack of availability of housing, but that's, I think, driven by the fact that there's no housing getting built. And we'll talk about that later on in here. But the fundamental thing is key here, though, which I find quite interesting, is yet the taxpayers have been funding such a similar scheme for years, and it's called the Help to Buy scheme. That's been going on for years, which allows the first-time buyers to buy a home with a 5% deposit, and the government guaranteeing between 20 and 40% of the loan. And this has been in operation since 2013. Now, it's a wee bit slightly different in Scotland, but the principle is the same. So taxpayers have already been guaranteeing 16 billion in loans for 224,000 first-time buyers. And when we look closer to home locally, since 2013, here it is, 921 first-time buyers in Fife have used the Help to Buy scheme to buy their first home, relying on the government to guarantee them on average over £30,000 on average. So this means that Fife alone has really about 28 million is at risk if these Fife homeowners default on those pre-existing Help to Buy loans. Yet the default rate is actually quite low.
Well, that's the help. Is that just the Help to Buy?
Yeah, that's just Help to Buy. That's 28 million just in Fife alone.
Yeah, so that's not even counting, obviously, the First Home Fund, which is they've been inundated with inquiries. How many people have gone on that as well, and they've had to stop that. So just shows you how many first-time buyers are going to struggle even more now. It's frightening, really.
The First Home Fund's been key for a lot of first-time buyers. I mean, for everybody, for people that aren't familiar with the First Homes Fund, it was introduced in December last year by the Scottish Government, and it was to allow up to £25,000 to be assisted and paid towards a first-time buyer in Scotland buying their first home. So a lot of first-time buyers took advantage of this, but it's been so inundated that they've actually run out of the initial funding that they are put aside to do this. And it's been withdrawn already. It will come back, though. We're hoping in April next year. So we're hoping that that's going to come back again, and then it will stimulate the market again. But I mean, it's key, though. We have a lifeblood, and that's the thing. So should the Prime Minister be playing with the housing market? That's the key here. Ought he instead to allow open market forces to be applied to the property market, allowing it to find its own normal, and leave the mortgage providers to decide on mortgages based on risk? Because all the Prime Minister will potentially achieve is a synthetic rise in property prices.
That's a risk that we run, especially if they're trying to implement things to dictate how the market's going to work rather than letting it naturally kind of find its own. There is a risk of that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I think as you continue to put money into the market, you'll continue to keep the market stimulated. But you're absolutely right. I mean, this actually says that, is there the risk that this will continue to grow and grow and grow and grow, and prices will continue to go up because this is a constant demand. I had said it in my previous one last week that really, to be honest, the government really can't afford the housing crash. So I think this is a method in order to keep that stimulated, just in case. So they could withdraw it. I mean, there is introducers and there's mortgage providers coming in, and they're doing one off for a week, maybe 80, 85% and 90% loan to value mortgages for first-time buyers. But they're instantly withdrawing them because they realise that they're inundated straight away and they can only take a certain amount of people. So it's almost like the supermarket opening its doors for its sale and then saying, sorry, the rest of you can't come in. And that's effectively what the mortgage market's like just now with some mortgage providers. They're just going, yep, open, closed. Sorry, we can't take any more. So do you think that will continue?
I think it has to, for now, because I think not only reason the prices are going up because of that, but interest rates are so low as well. I think that's another reason why property prices are going up. People are just buying stuff or bigger homes and being able to pay more coming from different areas as well.
Yeah, my biggest concern is interest rates are so low just now, and everybody's taking out mortgages, and some people are mortgaging themselves up to the hill. So there comes a point where what happens when interest rates start to go up again? You know, for some people, I think they're playing a risky game in terms of that, and actually mortgaging themselves up to the hill. You know, what's your thoughts, Richard?
Yeah, I've seen we've seen it in the past, people doing that and how it ends up. And I think like you were saying before, they keep creating these windows of opportunity, and that in turn is obviously creating a lot of demand, and that's what's creating this situation that we're in just now.
Yeah, but the key point here is, though, if you're going to spend 28 billion, okay, 28 million just locally here, could 28 million not be better spent on building affordable homes?
Yeah, that is, and in theory, that could be a better way. Obviously,
and then we're talking about 16 billion from before. So could 16 billion not have been better putting into building affordable homes?
Yeah, and social housing.
We're trying.
Do you know about any affordable homes actually being built in Fife?
Well, it's quite difficult because there's affordable homes and there's social housing and then there's council housing. So there's a fundamental difference here. So affordable homes, apparently, under economic circumstances, are anything that is 5% below the actual market value. Wait a minute. It's not exactly affordable if it's in St Andrews and it's 5% below market value.
Yeah.
But that's what affordable homes apparently is. I'm not really sure of the full criteria, but it is 5 or 10%. And that's meant to make it affordable, which, in my opinion, isn't the definition of affordable. And then there's social housing. So we class social housing as people like Kingdom Housing, Fife Housing. So they're social housing providers. Glen Housing is a social housing provider. They're set up as a private organisation, but they're run by a committee and people in order for the benefit of the community. And then there's what is the belts and braces council housing. In my opinion, council housing is the best thing that could ever happen to the rented market, because council housing is a safe tenure, it's secure, it's the council that's running it, there's nobody else making their own opinions, it is run for the good of the community. Council housing for me is always best. You know, private rented housing, absolutely fantastic. Private rented housing shows is for a specific market. It's supposed to be to accommodate people that don't want mortgages. It maybe want the flexibility of tenure. In other words, they're maybe only here for a couple of years and they're wanting to move on. So that tends to be where I think about the private rented housing market. So, I mean, it really is. In some fact, it could have been argued that it would be better spent on the public money on delivering affordable rental properties. For me, that's where I'm thinking where it should be. And then that will continue. I mean, it was Sharon, actually. Sharon asked me last week, thank you for asking me this question, Sharon, and I forgot to answer your question on my Sunday night roundup. But she said to me, would there not be an oversupply of buy-to-let properties if she went into if everybody starts continuing to go into be private landlords? But I said to Sharon, I don't think so, because in Scotland, we're needing at least 25,000 houses a year. And we've never even built to that capacity yet in Scotland. So we're not even reaching that capacity for new housing. So there's no way the rental market and the private rental market and the social rental market will ever run out of existing people to come into it. Because of that fact, we need housing. And even when you go down to the English market, I mean, they're not building anything in terms of social housing. They're hardly building anything at all. And they need 10 times as much as us. They're needing about 200,000 a year. So we're never, ever going to really run out of the availability of needing private rented landlords. I mean, it's key to it's a key tenure and a key choice to go in with council housing, private sales, and social housing sales and social housing. So this is all a good mix, which mixes into our economy, I would say. I mean, is that your thoughts as well, Richard? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, like you say, obviously we're a long way off ever even getting to the point where the market is at a point where we've got too much housing. I mean, that's just ludicrous to even think, because we're so long off that kind of level, and there's always the demand there, whether it be for in the private sector or, like you say, with social housing and things as well. We need more housing. So private landlords are in risk of getting to a point where there's too much properties.
Yeah, I mean, there's Stephen. He says he saw on Twitter a 10-year fixed rate deal under 2.5%. Stephen, I'll catch up with you later. You'll need to tell me about that.
I was going to say, I wouldn't mind
I'm in there like a flash. A 10-year fixed rate deal under 2.5%. That is mental. Where does that talk about the cost of money? I mean, we talked about as well negative interest rates. I mean, that's effectively where we're going. You'll never get a return on your money because we're lending money at such a low rate, and they need a differential in order to run their business.
Agree.
Negative interest rates are they're coming, and I talked about, and I've said to other people as well about, if you've got negative interest rates on the horizon, you're not getting a return on capital, then for me, the best place to invest is bricks and mortar. It is private renting. We've just demonstrated clearly that there is a need for it, and there is a continued need for it. So I definitely think that's where it is. So let's go on to talk about this again. However, in the long run, isn't it better for the country as a whole that the British people own their own home rather than rent? Because the government will have to rent to pay those tenants. Will have to basically rent to pay those tenants if they're when they retire, if they're on the basic low state pension. So when you think about it as well, if they're renting for all their life and then they go on the basic low state pension, then the government will have to assist them in their rent. So is it a double-edged sword? Is that a double-edged sword?
I think it is a wee bit, really, when you look at it like that.
Yeah, I'll go and say, actually, personally, I don't disagree with the initiative. Yet, all I'm querying is, what are the Fife first-time buyers going to be able to buy? The Fife property market is already quite drawn out, as ultra-low interest rates have augmented the gap between the first home and the second home to the third, and so on and so forth. So is this the initiative fashioning a massive demand that will inflate property prices up in the Fife property ladder still further, and ultimately lead to an even more frustrating down the line? We're pricing ourselves out of the market. And then that beggars belief about, is there a correction coming?
Yeah, I think that, and that's what I mentioned earlier, it's like, where does it leave first-time buyers in Fife? And also in turn, where does it leave people like myself and Jimmy, who we were first-time buyers, and in time we want to move on, and our properties are probably the ones that are going to be picked up with first-time buyers, but if they're left in a position where they can't buy, then it leaves us in a position where we can't move forward either. So, do you agree, Jimmy?
I would say that as well. I think it's, you have to have first-time buyers. Also, as well, talking about housing as well. Our market, we also have to, first-time buyers are almost having to compete as well at the moment with the council, because there's not enough council houses, so the council are having to buy properties back from people like ourselves to be able to house people. So it just shows about what needs to be built.
Yeah. You hit the nail on the head. This is a classic. It's happening just now, and no one knows about this really. The council has got a budget now, and they're going about buying properties back. And when we asked them, why on earth are you buying the properties back? Why are you just building them? They said it was actually more to build the property than it was actually to buy it back. It was simpler just to buy it back from existing stock and existing properties in the market. So even the council are now competing with first-time buyers.
Yeah. And they're buying them back.
That is controversial, isn't it?
Yeah.
Even the council is competing against first-time buyers. Completely controversial.
And we've done transactions with them recently as well.
Yeah, I think I checked the other day, because we've just recently accepted an offer with one of them actually on yesterday. I think I looked the other day on the profile, and I think, don't quote me on this, I think 11 offers they've made on our properties.
Yeah.
I mean, but then if that's with us, who are they doing? What with everybody else?
I'd imagine
a fair amount of housing stock, and so they're actually causing a pressured status in the housing market, the council themselves, by taking out. I go back to saying they should be made to build. They shouldn't be, ideally they shouldn't be allowed to. So, however, could this be the very thing that saves the Fife property market in 2021? Firstly, with the stamp duty holiday due to finish at the end of March, there are suspicions that the property market will stall. And secondly, the very popular Help to Buy scheme mentioned above also finishes at the end of March 2021. So the stamp duty threshold is finishing at the end of 2021, March 2021, and the Help to Buy scheme is actually ending at March 2021 as well. So that's going to be a double whammy. You know, the boost, instead of fueling house prices, inflation, could stabilise the actual property market. In fact, the government are hoping that the property market will help power us out of recession. And the early signs are good, as the Fife housing market has exploded as a result of stamp duty holiday introduced in the summer. It certainly needs it, as the country's GDP, so this is a gross domestic product, it grew by 2.1% in August, down from 6.4% in July, 9.1% in June, and 2.7% in May. So as a country, our GDP is still 9.2% below the level seen in pre-COVID. And that's, you know, that's still quite a worrying. So this is why I go on to say that the government cannot afford a housing market crash. So they will do everything in their power to keep this housing market going, and they will stimulate it. I'm still of the belief that come March 2021, the stamp duty exemption will be extended. But don't take me on my word on that, because Jim said.
To be fair,
I still think that's going to happen. That they'll not do that. Definitely. So as a country, yet the property market is doing well. The country remains on course to leave recession. Country is on course to leave recession in Q3, and yet with impending triple peril of rising unemployment after furlough lockdown restrictions, and a messy end to the Brexit transition period, does this mean we are potentially in for an interesting ride? You know, I mean, only time will tell if Generation Buy will happen and will help save the property market, the economy, and ultimately Boris, because he's sticking his colours to the mast.
Yeah.
In the meantime, I think it'll be a safe bet that people will still need homes to live in, and irrespective of what happens in the property market, with a simple fact that winners in all of this will be the Fife buy-to-let landlords as well. You know, the Fife buy-to-let landlords will continue to thrive.
They will.
Yeah. I would agree. I think the thing to remember is people move for circumstances. So there'll always be a market. There'll always be buyers out there. There'll always be sellers out there. There'll always be people needing to rent, looking to rent, buy to let, whatever it may be. So there'll always be a market there. It's just how strong it will be, really, I think, or just how the price and market's going to go. Right now, obviously, the market's very, very buoyant. You need to be ready and in position. So obviously, no one can predict the future and what's going to be happening with the prices.
Yeah,
I think that's it. Really, no one can predict the future, and we don't know. We're in unprecedented times. I mean, Phil, thanks for your comment. And GDP will be worse after furlough, the new scheme once and the new scheme once unemployment kicks in fully. Yeah. I mean, yeah, absolutely. We don't know where this is going to take us. We don't know where we're going. But I always say to people, make sure you plan to make sure you're in a position that you could do something about it if anything happens. That's it, really. When I plan for something, I always look at the downside and I minimize the risk as a result of that. So that, for me, that's key. It's minimizing the risk on the downside, and then you always know whatever happens is the upside is a bonus to what you're getting. So it's minimizing that position. Morning, David. How about you?
Plan for the uncertain as well. Yeah.
I think you told a good one about this is relating to sales, Jim, about being on the market.
Oh, Jimmy's froze.
Jimmy's froze. Let's all freeze.
No, I agree with what you're saying here, Jim, about planning for the uncertain, because I mean, we didn't know what's going to happen down the line, and I have a lot of people coming to me and saying, "Oh, we're going to hit recession. This is going to happen. This is going to happen." And to be fair, you can't really say that because we didn't know categorically what's going to happen. We could all have our own predictions, and I know obviously everybody's got their own views and they're entitled to that, but it's really a time will tell situation.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. It is. Time will tell over a period of time. Everybody's playing that game. I mean, I had said previously, everybody kept predicting that the market was going to crash in March this year. Everything's going to crash. It's going to be doom and gloom. We're all going to fall apart. And yet here we are, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October. We are 7 months on, and there's still no market crash. In actual fact, the market's continuing to rise as a result. So it's a fundamental difference in the marketplace. Absolutely. I don't see that happening, a market crash itself. But we'll take it from there and see how we get on. Okay. Right. Okay. So that brings me then to the classic example. I was asked this week from a buyer, actually from England. He couldn't understand. This is a question I was asked. He couldn't understand why our system is offers over, when in actual fact, and I didn't know this, in England, the system is actually offers under.
Yeah.
And I had to think for a moment. I thought, oh, you've caught me off guard.
That's a rare occasion, Jim.
You've caught me off guard. But I realised what it was. Ultimately, what's happening here is the offers over market in Scotland is driven because the home report that we do, the valuation, is based on historical information. It's because this one sold last year at this price. So the surveyor says, well, the price of your house in comparison to that one sold last year, if it's exactly the same, is that price. But it takes no account of market value. It takes no account of market demand. It takes no account of how many people are out there chasing it and wanting it. And that's a fundamental difference, because in England, they don't have the valuation with the home report. They have an estate agent, like what we used to do, actually set it at the market value. So used to set it a lot higher and then see where it lands from there. So in England, yes, absolutely. That's why it's an offers under system. In Scotland, it is an offers over system because it's historical information that's driving it. And every single time we are getting offers over all the time.
The offers over system is there for, and then it's pushed up to what the actual market dictates, rather than the valuation based on comparable to the previous property price. Yeah, I understand that, but a lot of people people from England don't really. It confuses them, the offers over system, and because we have home reports and that in place, it's different, obviously.
I know it's, and I was often asked that question all the time, and I was quite surprised that, and it was good. I was able to answer that on the spot. It was a sign.
When a question's put to you like that,
absolutely.
When you put a question to you, and sometimes the way it's worded, and you think, God, I don't know that, and then really when you think about it, you do know the answer. It's just sometimes the way it's worded.
Have we got Jimmy back in the game? Are you back in the game, Jimmy?
Don't know what's happening with the Wi-Fi. I think it was switching between 4G and the Wi-Fi.
Oh, that's murder. See, when I'm doing a home tour, or when I'm doing a pre-launch, you get caught out with that sometimes. You get halfway out to the garden and it just stops.
I've had that happen to me as well.
I think I got a text as well on the work phone, so that also didn't help as well. So there we go, back in the game now.
Phil says it's more down to the sealed bids that's driving the market. I mean, we're seeing an unprecedented amount of closing dates, aren't we?
Yeah, we've seen more.
Yeah, definitely had one this week actually. So there's definitely it was closing date on 2 first-time buyers, funnily enough. So there you go. I think that says it all.
Yeah, I mean, we have seen that where a lot of first-time buyers are actually outbidding themselves now. We had another person come in the leaving area, and they said, we're just going to, this is the offer, and it was significantly, it was about 10% more. Straight away, first-time buyer, this is our offer. We're no messing about. We've offered 6 times on 6 other properties. We can't get anything, and therefore we're just going to make this offer, and we want it off the market straight away. And the seller couldn't believe it when they got that offer. I mean, to a degree, I couldn't believe it either. I was really surprised, but that's the way it's going. I mean, we've actually been looking at these numbers every single week, and the amount coming on to the amount actually selling, and selling is still significantly outstripping the amount of properties coming on. So what's the advice then to the seller, Jimmy? What would you advise them to do?
Seller, well, if you're thinking of selling, you need to be on the market first and foremost. I'm still seeing a lot of people that are hesitant to put their property on the market. I don't know if you heard me or I come out there, but we had a conversation the other day. If you're on the market, you're in a win-win situation, because if your dream home comes up, you're in a position where you can accept an offer if it comes on, or you can go and view properties and say, I'm on the market, I'm actively looking. You can make a decision. But if you're off the market, who's actually going to be taking you seriously? Because you could be viewing any other properties. You're not making that jump like the seller has. And if you're on the market as well, if the right property is not up for you and you get an offer, you either just say, look, I'm not ready to find something. I haven't quite found somewhere. Can you wait X amount of time for me to find somewhere? Or you just reject the offer and wait for the next person to come along.
Yeah, ultimately that's what it is. I mean, I always say that to everybody as well. It's you need to be on the market to actually be taken seriously. And especially as well, it's the classic dilemma. It's like, well, and we've talked about it time and time again, but it's still trying to get it through to everybody as a seller. It's like, I won't put my house on the market until I found the house I'm wanting. But what happens is the person that you're wanting is thinking exactly the same way. It's like, I'm not putting my house on the market till I find the one I'm wanting. And it's like, well, wait a minute. It's what we call a catch-22 situation. You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. It's like, but the key is to put your house on the market and actually manage the sale. That's the most important thing. Now, what I mean by manage the sale, it's really waiting for the right circumstances to come along in order to before you accept the offer. It's not about the offer itself in monetary terms. Of course, that's a big thing for you, but it's also about the circumstances surrounding that. So it could be the third buyer that comes along and offers the right value for you, but also, and more importantly, gives you the right entry date and wants the right circumstances and is in the better position to do something.
I think people always say to me, I don't want to be homeless. That's never going to happen. Never going to happen.
I get it every time as well, and that's when I talk about the situation. I don't want to be homeless. It's like, and I don't want to live in rented accommodation. It's like, you'll never need to live in rented accommodation if you sell your house, because you're the one that decides. You're the one that decides to accept an offer or not. So if you've not got anywhere to go, don't accept the offer just now. Simple as that.
There was a couple of properties that I brought to market recently. They've been in that situation where they've liked a property, and I've had to just say to them, look, what is the reasons that you're moving for? And they've listed them, and I've said, well, if it's not this property that you get, you still need to get those. If it's a driveway, if it's on one level, if it's a garage, an extra bedroom, you still need that. So ultimately, you need to be in the market, because if you miss out on this one, there will be another one that come on the market that you like. But if you're not on the market and you're not sold, and you're just going to keep missing out, and you're just going to stay exactly where you are. At least if we're on the market, we can manage a sale. You can go and view properties, inform them of your position, and you can make a decision from there. So it's key just making sure you get all the correct information, making sure that you're managing the sale, managing people's expectations that actually come to view your property to qualify them first. We're selling for someone who's waiting for a property to be finished. Everybody that we want to be taking to the property, we're informing them that this is the date that they're looking at. Are you okay with that? And actually, I had one buyer who's going to view the property next week. Actually, she's willing to wait until July to get into this property because she's missed out on a similar one. So we've already informed them of that. We've already informed the client of that. It fits in with the person that wants to buy the property. She's abroad, and it all matches. And it just shows you that buyers out there are willing to wait for, it's going to be their home, whether it's a month or 2 months.
Wait for the right property.
Exactly. I've never had anybody, me personally, I've never had anybody yet when they're going to actually live in it and it's going to be the home that said, I'm not willing to wait. I've never had that. And we've always managed to get the sale done.
I often get that as well, and I keep telling people that it is a case of they will wait. Especially, I mean, the classic example as well. Especially if you've got an investor wanting to buy a property to let. The reality is, it's like they could wait as long as possible. They've got plenty of time to wait. So you've got ages to go and pick your ideal property or go and find your ideal property, and you've got a fantastic position because you've got somebody that's willing to wait for as long as you want to wait, and they're committed to buying your house. So you really want. I hate to say it, ideally you want a holiday homeowner or a buy-to-let investor because they're the people that will just wait forever. And it's no great to have holiday homes and investors, and I know how people are quite emotive and it's quite an emotive subject, but the reality is, they do buy properties, and we've just discussed it does create a good mix in the market in terms of housing and the availability of housing.
Yeah, I would agree. Sorry about me dropping out there. That was meant.
It's fine. Richard, so that then takes me on holiday homes, investors and all the rest of it. So lettings market, how's the lettings market and what's going on? And is there any new things being introduced to the lettings market? Because there's usually a raft of legislation in the lettings market that we have to contend with almost on a weekly basis.
There definitely is, yeah. And I think it's quite difficult for just individual landlords and things to keep up with that. And us as agents as well. But I mean, obviously, I find it quite interesting, and it's quite good to be up to speed and quite knowledgeable about what needs to be in place for the for lettings properties and things. I mean, the market just now is brilliant, but they do continually keep bringing in new legislation, and you really need to be on the ball. I touched last week on the EPC banding. Now this year, in April this year, it was supposed to come into force that the minimal banding was E, but you did have up until April next year, so you have that year time frame to bring your property up to the E banding, and then subsequently moving forward for that, then in 2020 April, 2022 in April, then you're going to have a minimal banding of D, and you would have a year to bring that up to speed. But that's all kind of been kiboshed by the coronavirus, obviously, situation. But it will come around again, so it's something that landlords really need to be in the know about, having their EPC banding up. Say, well, D is the national average at the minute, but at least E for the moment. And I've found that a lot of landlords who have rural properties, I do a lot of rural cottages and things for the farmers around Fife and things, and some of those properties are going to be really difficult to bring up to the standard that they need to be in the level. And I have consulted with, obviously, our contractors who do the EPCs and things, and there's going to be grants available for them to implement these changes, because older properties, some of them, especially like rural cottages and things, don't have cavities to put cavity wall insulation and things.
There has to be grants available for landlords to upgrade their properties, and even for homeowners. I mean, homeowners had that as well. And if you're wanting a level playing field, Mr. Chancellor, because you try to do a level playing field with the interest deducted against mortgages. So if you're wanting a level playing field with everybody else, then you have to give the same grants available to private owners, to private landlords as well, you know, to upgrade properties, especially, as you said, in terms of the stone-built properties. I mean, how on earth are you going to get their APC ratings up?
The way to do it, or the probably, is to looking at the suspended insulation under floor, which is suspended underneath the floor, and I mean it's quite a costly thing to do. So,
do you think this is going to impact on what properties investors buy then?
Yeah, well, because they're going to look at things that are going to be in that higher EPC band and bracket. Yeah, of course.
And this probably takes it to more investors wanting to buy more affordable housing, because probably the best built homes are probably ex-council houses, aren't they?
Ex-local authority houses are probably the best bet, Whereas there's a lot of these rural properties and stone-built properties and things in rural areas are so popular just now, and the rents on these are getting pushed up so high because of demand. But then on the flip side, in time, they're going to have to be compliant in terms of EPC rating.
There is a huge demand in the rental market just now, isn't there?
Yes. Oh, yeah, definitely. The challenge here is to try and get more stock on and supply to meet the demand. And I mean, I'm bringing on quite a few at the moment, but a far cry for what I would wish that we had to meet the demand we've got. And you even see people and renters who rent in certain areas and have obviously certain budgets picking up properties in areas where they wouldn't usually rent, because like it's the same with the first-time buyers, where they say, like you said, I've put offers down on 6 different properties and beaten every time with their offer. It's the same with rentals. We've got so much demand that people are looking elsewhere where they wouldn't normally rent, or properties that they wouldn't maybe ideally rent previously. Because
this is where I come back to saying we're actually getting closing dates on rented properties where people are actually outbidding themselves to get a rental property. I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but imagine getting sealed bids on a rental property. But we do that. You know, we do that, and other agents don't do that at all. And people will be surprised about this, but this is the way the rental market's going sometimes, because we've got so many people chasing a property that they're prepared to pay a lot more in terms of just a normal rent. Yeah,
and I even had this conversation with a landlord on Friday when I was out looking at a property, and we were talking about rental value and where it kind of sat in terms of the market at the moment. But I did say, when we get to the point where we've got numerous people wanting to take it, then it comes to the point where, well, if you're willing to pay more, then, and that pushes up the value. And she was quite surprised by that. I says, but that's the way it is at the moment. So
It really is supply and demand, isn't it? And there is a lack of supply. I mean, we have a landlord, quite a big landlord, that's been with me for a lot of years, and I've known them for a lot of years, since the very beginning when I started Fife Landlord Association in 1999. She's been there ever since, and now she's beginning to exit the market. So she's actually getting rid of possibly about she's maybe got about 18 properties, and she's starting to get rid of some of them and pass them on and get just basically put them back into the stock, which is great for first-time buyers, because ultimately most of these properties will be excellent first-time buyer properties. But just now, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get another landlord to take over the existing stock. Purely for the fact that there is tenants in situ, and you don't want to make somebody homeless in order to get a first-time buyer, because that defeats the purpose then. Because then we're back to this. We're back to, again, this catch-22 about the availability of stock. And this comes back to the council and the government actually building houses, building rented accommodation houses, council houses, and not building what is non-affordable houses, really.
Yeah, I would agree. And I know which landlords you're referring to, I think, and also, but there's not just her, there's a few of them like that at the moment, but they're in the mindset whereas they've all got sitting tenants and they don't want to be going to the open market and just punting them to anybody and getting rid of the tenant. They're kind of looking for, ideally, buy-to-let investors as well to pick them up and continue the lets that are in place, which is great for buy-to-let investors if they're picking up property. It's instant income with a tenant in situ. So,
yeah, absolutely. And that then, sorry, Jimmy.
What would I just a little bit off topic here, but I did a couple of viewings yesterday with someone looking to invest. He first inquired about a particular property, had £50,000 cash, and he was just looking at one property, and obviously put him in directions of 2 or 3 others that we had on the market, which he also went and seen, and obviously discussed. I'm not an investor or a landlord like yourself, so but I did sort of push him in the direction of, look, you can get more than just this one for that money. What would your advice to be someone like that, especially when we have people on our books that have
with 50,000 cash? I would only spend 50,000 cash on a property if I was needing to refurb it. So I'd buy the property outright in the beginning, I would refurb it, and then I would get the financing on it. So I'd buy it outright, refurb, and then add all the value onto it, get the mortgage on the higher value, right? And often that'll take all the money back out you originally put in, and you'll be left with an infinite return on that property. And then you can just move on to the next property and do exactly the same again. And it's called rinse and repeat.
Rinse and repeat. I was just about to say that.
Every single time. Or if you don't have that option, then you can take £50,000 and you could probably split that up into 3 deposits of just over 15,000 each. And that takes up to 45, and the extra amount's the 4% ADS, which is the stamp duty. You have to pay for a second homeowner. So you've got 3 properties then, and you get mortgages at 75% loan to value, because that's what you would get in a buy-to-let mortgage. And that would allow you to buy properties at probably around about the 60,000 mark. So that would get you a nice 2-bedroom ex-local authority, maybe a 3-bedroom ex-local authority property. That would rent for round about 450 to a 3-bedroom, which is 495 a month, and that will give you a fantastic return. So you'd have 3 of these generating £450 a month. That's 1,200, 1,350 a month. So that's 1,350 a month you would have coming in income. And if you've remortgaged them, your mortgages would be a fraction of that. Your mortgage, you'd be lucky if your mortgage was £300 overall for the £1,300 that you're bringing in. And then you've got a clean leeway, about £1,000 coming in for repairs, a managing agent. We spoke about this last week. It is key to use a managing agent because a managing agent knows what they're talking about. And I'm not trying to sell our services, people out there. This is key. It doesn't matter what managing agent you use. You need a professional managing agent. You need to do that in order to make sure, because there's 50 pieces or more of legislation you've got to contend with. And you won't know them all. And why on earth would you reinvent the wheel? That's what it comes back to. So, Jimmy, I know that's a big, long answer to get the result. £50,000. So to take £50,000, that's how to leverage it and make a huge return. And you're almost touching around about 15 or 16% return on capital there in terms of that. Sorry, what do you get in a bank? 0.
I tried explaining that to him. Obviously, he took it actually all on board. He's going to do a few more today. We have people buying cash in St Andrews, and they're just going to, buying it all cash. and just putting a tenant in there, trying to explain to them, obviously, about different strategies and stuff. But some people don't want to listen.
Yeah, this is an interesting one from Phil. Phil's actually said, why do some of the private landlords not get together and build affordable property or a letting property? Why wait for the government and the council? Absolutely right, Phil. I'm actually in the process of putting together a property fund. So in order to become a fund manager, so we will potentially be fund managers for a property portfolio. People will invest in it, and we will take that fund. We will possibly build our own houses, and we will get a return on that and make sure we manage and support them. And our investors will get a good return on that as well. And we will have an appreciating asset over time. That's absolutely key here. But what the key here is as well is, you know, we can do that privately, but we'll have to do it at an affordable cost. It's not similar to what the social housing providers do, because they actually get subsidence. They get money from the government to actually subsidise their build. For every social housing house they build, they get money towards that, almost to the point that actually they get it built for nothing. So that's why they can afford, that's why the social housing providers can afford to actually charge a lot lower rents, because they've got no capital to get a return on, because it's been subsidised by the government in the first place. Whereas a private investor has that money, they have to recoup the capital in order to pay the mortgage and the finance on that. So you usually find the difference between a private landlord in terms of rent and the difference between a social landlord and rent is actually the amount of capital they have to finance in between the rent. Because one charges round about £300 a month, a private landlord charges £450 a month, and £150 is, guess what? That's the finance, that's interest on financing the capital in the first place. So that is the difference between how a social housing landlord provides the rental and the difference between the price bracket. Yeah. And you're absolutely right. Is there? Well, you've got one. You've got one on my platform, Phil. Should you not lobby for the same or similar subsidies? Absolutely right. I am constantly lobbying the government about this, and I have been lobbying the government for the past 27 years. And as the chairman, the ex-chairman of the National Landlord Association in Scotland, I was lobbying the government. I've even sat down with Scottish Homes before and actually sat in front of them and going, right, that's fine. You give subsidies for that, so why do you not do it for us? They used to do it years ago. They used to do it years ago where they used to actually give subsidies in order for landlords to build to rent. And a lot of private landlords, some of them I know, that actually used that scheme to build a lot of housing stock around the Fife area. And they're really good landlords, and they could have a good return, and they provide lower rents as a result of that. So there's no reason why that can't continue to go. And the government has actually muted that they want investment houses to actually go that route. But the investment houses don't want to do it. They don't want to get involved in it. And Nationwide tried to get involved in it years ago with a proposition called At Home. And they had built a development in Perth. And it was actually, their brand was called At Home, the wee symbol at in home. So Nationwide Building Society used to try to get into it. And then subsequently, a few years later, they actually sold it off and said it was completely uneconomic. They couldn't run it as a social landlord because they weren't getting any subsidies. They weren't able to afford it. But that's because finance costs were so high. But with finance costs being so low and people more acceptable to get a lower return, this model can actually work now. It just needs someone to bring all these people together and as investors in order to build this fund, in order to facilitate this and grow this project and manage it all the way through. And I think that could be done today. It's just the dynamics of how to put that together and the key people in order to advise that process. So we are working on it, and I am working on it, and it will happen at some point in time in the near future. So thank you very much for bringing that up, Phil.
That was a good question, and I would love to see something like that happen, especially with the way the housing market is and the shortage of housing and things. That would be something amazing to see. So hopefully, further down the line, we will see that happen.
I would love to
help make that happen. That would be great.
I would love to have complete control of a housing project and complete control about the tenants and how everything's managed. Because my biggest bugbear as a private landlord is nobody else wants to put their hand in their pocket to do improvements on mutual repairs.
Yeah.
You know, when you come to mutual repairs for a roof, it's like they all want you to put your hand in your pocket, and that's fine. But then when it comes to mutual repairs where I want them to put their hand in their pocket as a private house owner or a private landlord or a social landlord, it's like, oh, well, we'll have to get costs and we'll have to get quotes for that. It's like a totally different thing. So they expect me to dish it out all the time, but they're not prepared to dish out themselves. I've had that successively all the time over the years. Over the past 27 years, I've had people like that all the time. They want me to dish it out, but they're not prepared to dish it out themselves when I say you'll have to contribute towards that.
Yeah,
that's,
and
me that's me on my platform again.
Yeah, but no, I do agree, Jim, and obviously managing properties over the years, I've seen it, and no, it's true. I see it week in, week out with mutual repairs, and it is an issue.
I don't mind putting my hand in my pocket straight away. If somebody's heating bursts and the heating engineer goes around and says, need a new boiler, no bother, new boiler. If they need a new roof, no bother, new roof. If they need this, the difficulty is in making sure you've got the right contractors, because we know that a lot of these some of these contractors actually say, oh, you need this all changed. And then when you come in, you say to yourself, well, wait a minute, it doesn't need all changed. It's like, so you have to watch, because some of them are actually just trying to drum up business for themselves.
Yeah.
It's the reason why a lot of contractors get tested on my properties first. So it tends to be me that sees it all and gets it all. And then if we're comfortable and we know we can trust them, we then roll them out to our existing customers.
Yeah, and we've got quite a lot of reliable contractors on our books. But when you worked in property for so many years, you get to know things like you say, boilers and things as well. So when you're told that it needs to completely replace, and you look at, or just for example, you've got a wee bit of knowledge yourself about how things work. It's quite good, but some people don't. So
it's experience, isn't it? It's knowing that, because exactly when they say, "Oh, you need a new boiler," and you're going, "Wait a minute, no, you didn't." It's the thermocouple, it's the gas valve, it's the old
roofs are the worst one, because obviously you can't get up on the roof and look at it yourself. Well, you could potentially.
Still, I tell you what really surprises me about roofs. When a roofing contractor, and we had it this week, where I'm trying to get a mutual repair for downstairs. This is why I've got to be in my body. And I've said, this is how much it's going to cost to fix it. And I've had my roofer inside looking at my property and seeing where it's coming and then working out where it's coming from on the roof, right? So the downstairs guy says, I've had 2 roofers out. And I went, so at what point did you let them into my property to see what's happening then? And he went, well, they don't need to. And I went, what? Since when did a roofer go up on a roof and say, oh, well, that's what's wrong with it, without actually seeing what it's causing inside?
Yeah.
How on earth would they know? I don't get that.
I visited myself.
You'd want to see inside first.
Yeah.
I think that's going back to why you need it managed, because you need to know if someone that's maybe just starting in buy-to-lets, they might just get any Joe Blogs to go and price up the job, get stung for it. When we have people, we have a team that's will look after it and do the best job they can and make it do the job properly and at the correct price, and let everybody be happy and move on, basically.
And the property that Jim's referring to, obviously, I know what that situation is, and I visited, obviously, on behalf of Jim as your managing agent, basically, and I determined what the problem was, and it was entirely different from what was portrayed to us as through the management side. Yeah, definitely pays to have a management in place.
I've seen it time and time again. A classic example over the years with the roofs. The roofs is a big bugbear of mine, because this is where roofers do actually take advantage of you. Where they've run up and says, oh, it's the skew down the side, it's needing sorted because it's that. And then I would take them inside and I would say, like, look up in that attic. And then look up in the attic and they would see the water coming in from somewhere else completely different, right? And then what it would do, it was it'd run down the rafter. It'd run down the rafter and then it would come out inside the property, inside my house, inside the room at a completely different point. So they're actually saying, oh, no, that's what's wrong. And it's like, and it's like they have no idea that the water's traveling from somewhere else. So when they go up and have a look and they don't actually look inside the property, it's a classic. It's a rip-off. And you then have to continually get them back round again, saying you've not done the job. And guess what? They disappear.
Yeah, and it's scary how...
Gone for dust. And you'll never hear from them again. You know, I had a guy come back to me about 5 years later after he'd done something like this to me. And he said, oh, have you got any jobs going on and all the rest? And I thought, have you completely forgotten how you ripped me off?
That's right. It's scary though, because...
Not at all. It's in there. It's always in there.
Yeah. People know that.
And it's like,
remember these people.
If you've got any jobs on, I would love to work with you again. It's like, I think you've got amnesia or something.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's a shame, because people that aren't as knowledgeable or maybe inexperienced can kind of be fleeced by some contractors, and it's a shame. So it does happen.
It is, absolutely it is. Yeah, that is the key to make sure, and we'll probably wrap up on that, guys. God, that's an hour already.
I know that's cool.
That's because I talk too much. So we'll wrap up here, guys. But that is the key advice, and we'll say it again as we said last week. I mean, what's your thoughts for just wrapping up, Jim? Is it get the best advice? And
I think it's always, well, I'll probably have the same advice from start to finish to it, and with everybody. You need to get professional advice on anything that you do. Need to know the ins and outs of everything before making a decision. And making sure you need to plan for the future. Ultimately, that's why everybody always plans for the future. So you need all the best advice, and you need all your different options of what you have as well. So just speak to as many people as possible to get the best advice, really.
Yeah, Richard, what's your thoughts on wrapping up?
Yeah, I would agree, Jimmy. I mean, plan for the future, but as you plan for the future, I think always, like we discussed earlier, plan for the uncertain as well. And to help you through that, whether you're a first-time buyer looking for a mortgage, whether you're a landlord looking for to buy to let, get the right professional advice as you do that, and plan for the uncertain, because these kind of times are showing that if you don't, then you're going to get caught out, and it could be costly.
Yeah, and a final note for me is exactly what you said, Richard. I mean, it is if you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Yeah,
that's the ultimate. And then Phil, we'll just leave the final word with Phil. And again, why you need a management company.
Yeah,
that's key. I mean, thanks very much for that, Phil. That is key here. Why you need a management company, why you need a professional estate agent to do the job. We never even got a chance to talk about. We never even got a chance to talk about fees. And I'll talk about that in tomorrow night's 8 o'clock. I'll do a weekly roundup on the Fife Property Market, and I'll talk tomorrow night at 8 o'clock why a 2% agent, an agent that charges you 2% to sell your house, is more valuable to you at the end result and gets you more money than a 1% agent. And that is unbelievable. And that's why a lot of people don't realize in selling their house or even renting their property, that it's important to get the right person, and you shouldn't be focusing on fees. And we'll talk about that tomorrow in tomorrow night's Fife Property Roundup at 8 o'clock on these channels. Again, thank you very much for your time, guys. Have a fantastic weekend, and we'll see everybody next week at 9:30 on the Fife Property TV show.
Okay.
Bye for now.
Thanks, guys.